if anything that I think my message boils down to, I know my message boils down to is empowerment. Empower yourself first. Then you can help your family. Don't be that guy that's like, well, I'm living for my family. Fuck that. You live for yourself first, man. Because if you're just a hollow shell walking around as a hologram for your family, that ain't fuck all. It's not enough. You have to be solid, right? What do they tell you? The mask drop down in the airplane. Put your mask on first. Put your mask on first, man. You got to make, how do you set a good example if you're not a good example?
This episode is brought to you by Trident Coffee, the veteran-owned brand where every sip inspires you to live life full steam ahead. I've been drinking their coffees for a while now, and I'm glad to partner with a company whose products I use. At Trident, they're more than just coffee, they're storytellers. Crafted by veterans, their instant cold brew is perfect for those who serve, those who have served, and anyone who values wellness. Featuring natural ingredients like organic mushrooms, adaptogens, and nootropics, it's more than just a morning pick-me-up. It's your new wellness ritual. Enjoy it at home or on the go, wherever your day takes you. Trident Coffee isn't just about great tasting coffee. It's about empowering you to be the healthiest version of yourself. Because great veterans make great citizens. Try their instant cold brew today, along with many other coffee products, and taste the freedom of wellness. Remember, when you choose Trident, you're not just choosing coffee. You're choosing a path of connection through health and wellness. Head on over to tridentcoffee.com and use the promo code TDP15 for 15% off your order. Again, that's TDP15 for 15% off your order. This episode is brought to you by Soflete, a tactical fitness company founded by special operations soldiers. Soflete is dedicated to helping you achieve a healthy lifestyle. From expertly crafted training programs to high-quality proteins, pre-workouts, and sleep and recovery supplements, they've got everything you need to power through your day. Soflete also has a full line of clothing. They have you covered from shorts to cold weather gear. Embracing the motto, Die Living, Soflete inspires us all to embrace life with vigor and resilience. So take the first step towards a healthier you. Visit soflete.com, that's SOFLETE.com, and use the promo code TDP20 to get 20% off your order. Again, that's TDP20 for 20% off your order. Hey everyone, welcome back. My guest this time has an interesting story, and that is a complete understatement. It was definitely an interesting conversation for me. It's one of those interviews where I almost feel like I just want to say, hey, let's just get into the interview and let the story lead where it goes. But I'm going to give you some of the wave tops. Jail, Navy SEAL, jail, well, actually arrest, pending jail, kicked out for a positive drug test, civilian life, somewhat successful, prescription drug abuse, deep dark hole, French Foreign Legion, drama on his way out of the French Foreign Legion. All the things that on the surface you would think there's almost nothing to be redeeming about this person. But that's where the story changes. It is a story of complete redemption. Pulling yourself out of the absolute deepest, darkest hole you can imagine. And not just pulling himself out of a deep, dark hole, but actually becoming an inspiration to others and helping them turn their lives around. I know you're going to enjoy this conversation, so let's get into it. Here's episode 157 with Taylor Cavanaugh. For me, always keeping something to keep working towards.
Absolutely.
You know, it just keeps you young, keeps you, I know it sounds cliche, but it just keeps you motivated.
No, it's not cliche at all, and I'm looking forward to diving into it on this.
Do you really get up at 2 o'clock every morning?
I get up at like 3:30. That's been fundamental for my fucking inner peace and clarity. That was, and I'll talk about that. That has been an absolute game changer for me. That changed the game.
Okay, and obviously we're going to get into this more. Time with the SEALs, time with the Legion, and I understand you already have a personal dedication. You've got the in you to drive yourself that way.
Yeah.
But how does that impact your overall life, like you mentioned with your fiance and stuff? Because I'd imagine you got to be getting to bed by 7:30, 8 o'clock to even get
at 10:30.
So you're surviving on just a little bit of sleep.
And juice too, because really, and this is the most massive, when your nutrition's good, when your hydration's correct, and when you're tapped in with purpose, that's when you hit another level of energy, when you're stoked on what you're doing. That's key, and I'm sure there's been, think about times that, especially early in your law enforcement career, you're fucking fired up, right? Man, you can get up early and get going on shit. It's like when you start to get bogged down. So it was getting tapped into, first, me getting a lot of clarity from it. I really started to validate myself through my daily habits, and that's what we'll get into. Are we live right now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I just figured we'd just jump right into it.
Oh, perfect. I like that. That's why I was making sure. So it started in the Legion. That's when I realized, when I started to come from my second transition, right? Which not many people have two. I got a chance to redo one. So the first one I fumbled the fuck out of it, right? But seemingly no. That was why I could lie to myself, because it was a sleeper, because I walked right into a massively good job. I had done the correct steps, even though I got out not the correct way, right? It was kind of forced, failed steroid test, boom, that was it. It's looked at like drugs in the Navy. So it was zero tolerance. Took it on the chin, took a general discharge under honorable circumstances, got out. But for that 5 months I was being out processed, I'm like, I got to start working some networking, which is also important. So I had known guys from the country clubs and stuff, from golf tournaments and things with the SEAL community, which became close friends and had been friends with them for many years, mentors kind of. I said, hey, here's what I want to do. That's another thing. Be clear about what you want to do, so you can actually ask people what people want to help, but you have to be clear about what you need. That was massively helpful for me, is that I was very clear about what I needed. Said, I want to get into this field. Will you just put me in front of somebody so I could talk to them, and then I'll be good. So I did that one interview left to another. And then I walked into a supervisor position for the largest private residential developer in the United States, on the largest project in the United States at the time. And so I'm number 2 guy. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I'm like, boom, I got to figure it out, man. I walked right into pretty much a lateral step financially, lateral step, in terms of me being pretty good. But what I didn't fix, and what I got to fix on the second time, was my daily habits.
What I'd like to hit on real quick, though, is what you were able to step into, I'm assuming, is that natural leadership capability that we all learn from these careers. Even if you don't have the necessary title of leader, by rank, from day one, we are learning leadership, and we're learning teamwork and getting an objective accomplished through leading a team. Yeah,
and stress management that you just learned from our jobs. A lot of stress management. Also, how to speak, right? You're speaking to groups of people, public speaking, and a lot of pressure. So that transitions very well. And we could take constructive criticism. Guys in law enforcement, military, we take it on the chin, right? You learn how to operate in a pretty brash environment, which translates very well over there because we're not sensitive. We can speak in front of people. Most of the time, pretty damn confident, right? Just from what we've done. So that was helpful. So it was didn't know anything about construction, but I did know how to ask questions. I did know how to drop my ego, ask people what I needed to learn, and also how to manage small teams. I knew how to talk to people and get the best out of them. So that's why I was helpful there.
You've got an amazing story, and anybody who's followed you has to have heard this story, but I want to hit on some pieces. Born in Boston.
Yeah.
Your old man's from Boston, and your mom?
Yeah, they were both up there working out at the same athletic club, and that's how they met.
And you guys came out to California because your dad got stationed at El Toro?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Was he a career Marine?
No, he was in for 6.
Okay.
So he worked on Chinooks and stuff, and so that's what brought us to Southern California.
And then after leaving El Toro, you guys went south to San Diego, but your mom and dad had already split at that point.
They were still together. It was a choppy relationship, but they were in and out. And but at that time, they were good. And my mom's mother lived in Chula Vista. So we went down there. My dad was commuting on a motorcycle for a while, back up to El Toro and back and stuff. And so that was going on. And then he got out and we just moved down there permanently. And then pretty much they bought a house and we stayed down there.
How old were you when they actually split up?
Oh, when they finally split up, I was in about middle school time frame.
And he went back to Boston?
He was in San Diego for part of it, in and out, kind of and then now he's back there.
What was where I'm going with this, coming from a product of divorce myself, that initial jump off when it's time to choose between mom and dad.
Yeah.
You opted to stay with your mom. Why was that?
Well, my dad wasn't really an option. My dad was a little bit, and he'll admit this himself, problems with drugs and alcohol, and was just not stable in that capacity. So he was, in and out, kind of between some jobs, and he ended up working for the post office for a while, but then kind of transitioned. It was just a lot of movement. So I was never really brought to the question. It was staying with my mom.
Looking back on it though, as a young kid, could you see that in your dad? Were you seeing?
I saw a lot of chaos. Yeah, I saw a lot of chaos, holes in walls and a lot of, not violence towards me. It wasn't like that. It was just, a lot of tension and chaos. I'm sure, a lot of guys see this who know that, who are from that. I still am affected by that, really. Like, I don't like when people yell. I still get that little boy in me, man. I'm like, I don't like confrontation, surprisingly enough. It makes me feel very uncomfortable.
I've had another guest on who is a former firefighter. And one of the things that he really brought out is, for many of us who come into the veteran and first responder community, we come in with trauma already.
Yeah.
Broken homes, those screwed up relationships that we had as a kid. And then we've already learned how to start packing it. Yeah. And then you put us in these environments where we're seeing more trauma and the worst of humanity. And we just, our natural instinct is just to pack it down.
You got me the chills, man, on that one. No, I'd never heard it really put that way before. That was articulated very well. It's you become a subject matter expert on packing it down. So you go in and you already know how to do it.
Yes.
It's like, and I don't even like the word compartmentalization, because we don't even do it. We just pack it all into the same box, right? We just pack it into the same box. And for us, we can manage it for the most part, especially while we're in, because we're still engaged. So we're still in the process of packing. You're busy when you're packing, man. You don't have time to really defrag and off gas. You're in it. And so, and also you're in purpose. And so you have the ability to kind of shelf it. And that's why I really like your podcast is learning, understanding that is a powerful piece is that you've been doing, because then you're aware of it. So that way it doesn't sneak up on you on the back end.
Well, and, you met my buddy when you came in. Yeah. So we were just talking the other day. He was telling his wife stories of when he was in the Corps and doing rappelling from a helicopter, that type. And she's like, but you're afraid of heights. He said, but I'm more afraid of looking like a wimp to my buddies.
Yeah, that's well said.
And so, but the thing is, it's true. Because when we come into these environments, if you show that you're weak, you're the dinner on the table.
Oh yeah.
And so there isn't that ability to kind of take that, I'll call it a breath, and unpack everything and go, okay, let me no, I'm just going to keep packing more garbage on top of the old garbage, because you don't want to look like you're going to let down your team amongst your peers. Yeah.
It's also, even though it's still kind of taboo, even though I think it's getting a little less, it's kind of sad in our communities. So if you're like, hey, I'm having some issues, you're immediately kind of red flagged and sidelined, because it's like, oh, this guy's a wild, when actually I really would like to change that narrative a little bit. I have a couple clients that are 30-year law enforcement guys who are in the healing space, and they'll get into some plant healing and things like that. Also, guys who never thought they would do that, pretty straight edge guys, but they're like, look, man, and I haven't done it personally, but I hear a lot of good things from guys. And when talking to them, it's interesting because there needs to be some kind of apparatus built in. And I speak specifically for law enforcement and first responders, because I think it's more difficult. And I'll tell you why. Because in the military, you can see some pretty horrendous stuff, but you're on deployment. And so you're kind of not living a normal life. You can go in your tent and kind of defrag and not have to talk to anybody for fucking days if you don't want to, right? For the most part. You guys have to come home and go to dinner and then do it again, or even go on a call the same day, probably. That is a different level. And a lot of, I've heard SEALs and stuff on podcasts speak to that also, in that it's more challenging. It's also a lot more often, chances are, pulling out little kids out of pools and really horrendous stuff, and then having to console family members. It's a multiple layers of shit. that there needs to be some kind of apparatus built in, that there's a front load healing part, which is making sure your daily habits are correct from the first part. So you're stacking the deck in your favor. And that's what I'll get into too, which is helpful to make sure guys aren't drinking every day, when they come home, when they're not in this perpetual thing of all just kind of making sure they're healthy in that capacity, body, mind, and soul. Physically, they're feeling good. That self-worth is built up, as you know, when we go to the gym, when we eat right, guess what? We feel better. So we're things are more manageable. That part's good. And then the back end side, which is, hey man, we need to, write down what happened. Not in a report, but on a more spiritual, emotional sense. Like, hey, what down? How are you feeling? Like, are you aware this is going down? How are you processing it? And it not be, I need to go talk to a psych. It's like built into this is protocol. You do this, and it might be like that in some departments, but it needs to be built in.
Unfortunately, it's not, and that's my new thing. Is if I could have an impact on the new young men and women coming into law enforcement, it would be from day one. You go to that, and I'll use the analogy. It always comes back to kids, because what a lot of people don't realize is the level of inhumane that another person could do to a child.
Yeah.
Just different level.
Yeah.
And as a young 22, 23, 24-year-old kid who really doesn't have much life experience, to throw them into a call to experience this, it's going to scramble your eggs between your ears. And it should.
Yeah.
From day one, your training officer should be going, how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
What did that do to you? And then encourage them to be okay with saying, I don't like how I feel about that.
Yeah.
It may not, like you said, it may not immediately like, hey, go talk to a shrink.
Yeah.
How about just go back and hang out at the station for the rest of the day? Process this. I like the idea. Maybe you just start journaling how you feel. Yeah. And it might be something where you can refer back to it and go, yeah, this is how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
But also work in something where a lot more agencies are doing this, and I like this. They're embedding psychologists within the organization.
That's good.
They just give them an office and they're there all the time, as opposed to, hey, it's Tuesday at 3:00. The psychologist here who wants to go talk.
Yeah.
And so if they're just always there, pretty soon it gets easier to just go knock on the door. Hey, doc, you got a minute?
Yeah.
So all of that stuff is changing. Like you said, it's just got a long way to go.
And I'll tell you what they used to do to us in the service when we'd come back from a deployment. We had to do I didn't think they call it off-gassing, but kind of a defrag in Germany or wherever. We did it in Turkey once, in Germany, but you come in and it's a mandatory thing. They go, okay, you guys are funneling in. They funnel you into a room. Okay, they speak to you as a group. Okay, and then it's mandatory. You can't go home unless you do this, which I actually think for calls and stuff would be helpful. It's, okay, this kind of call went in, whatever supervisor, hey, you got to go speak to, it's just, that way it's not ones and twos. It's everybody's doing it. It's mandatory across the board. It wouldn't be that difficult or time consuming. You just, as part of your debrief on the way back, after you write your reports. But they used to do that to us. We had to speak to a psychologist. Hey, what did you see? You see dead bodies? Did you see this? How do you feel about it? Are you good? And they just assess you. You're like, yeah, okay. Now, whether people are honest or not, but at least that it's open and it's not put a lid on and just kind of, okay, go back to your calls, man. It's like, you just have to, the ability to do that. I have a lot of respect for law enforcement guys and first responders. It is, and firefighters. It's a lot, man. Well,
and you talked about it already, and I've heard this explanation from Travis House, who is a Marine. He's done both sides. He's done fire and police side. As a veteran, you deploy, you see horrible shit, but when you come back home, for the most part, there's nothing that's a reminder of what it was like when you were overseas. Mm-hmm. You've already said this. As a first responder, you go to a call either at a house or at the intersection of walk and don't walk. But the thing is, if you're going to do 20 or 30 years for that agency, you're going to go through that intersection how many more times the rest of your life?
Wow, that's a good point.
And like you've already mentioned, add on top of that, maybe if you live in the general area and now you're driving through that intersection with your family. Are you supposed to actually turn to your wife and kids and go, hey guys, you know what happened to here last night with Daddy? He got into a fight with a guy and almost lost his life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But the trauma just keeps repeating itself.
Yeah.
So again, I don't in any way want to try to compare trauma. It's just the reminders of it.
Well, no, trauma's trauma, and it's what we're speaking about is healing and solving it. And I think of the challenges that's created from being stateside. Any military guy would understand, and I've heard it multiple times, so I know it's a common thought is, dude, I don't know how they fucking do it and just go home and sit in dinner, and like you have to be normal. You know, you can't go, hey, I'm not talking about you. You have to be a human being, and like your kid doesn't know. It's like we just don't deal with that.
You got into sports heavily as a kid growing up, right?
Yeah.
Driven, it sounds like, because lacrosse and football.
Yeah.
So again, going back to that, you've got something in you that natural drive. Where I'm kind of interested in hearing your story is, but you also then went off the rails while you were in high school.
Yeah.
So where does that intersection meet? In the sense you were able to drive yourself to get colleges going, hey, we like you, but at the same time you're out doing drugs and stuff like that. Yeah. Where does that mix come in? You
know what? I've really thought back of what it started. I was always I didn't know better. That's the simple thing. I just thought it's what you do. And for me, it was normal. Looking back, I probably pushed the pace a little bit. Like I'd be at lacrosse tournaments, you know, up at Stanford or wherever, 16 years old, I already have tattoos and stuff. And coaches would be looking at me. I wouldn't even go to some of the practices, and I would I had a fake ID and go buy beer and go, it just crazy. It just didn't make sense, but I thought it maybe was cool, or I don't know. I really, maybe I had some void to fill. It was more fucking fun. I just didn't see the repercussions of it. Cause even when I got kicked out of school, and why I've had a lot of challenges, I think, is because I can lie about a lot of things because I was still academic All-American. I was still captain of the teams, right? I was still going to, I wasn't missing class. I was doing my homework. So it was like this, you know, I'd get an academic All-American thing and people were like, oh, you know, but I'd be out partying and stuff. And it wasn't like it's very overly intelligent. It was just, I did my fucking homework. You know, I would go home and do my homework and just show up to class and then play in sports. But I would get, you know, in a lot of close calls. I'd be down in Mexico shooting steroids back for practice. It just a lot of pushing the envelope, but it was kind of common in Poway for at that time. You know, there's some like affluent kids. I didn't grow up, you know, with a lot of money. Single mom was a teacher, but some kids said, so that allowed a little bit more freedom of movement and stuff like that. Kids had cars and trucks and stuff. So it was just kind of a cocktail of there's a lot of guys that lost. Most of the people I grew up in high school with are in prison or dead. And that's for sure, except one person. And he still has a problem with drugs. So looking back, it definitely wasn't normal. How the group was, look at the track record of what ended up happening.
When you look back at that time in your life, was there anybody who was a voice in your ear to be like, hey man, rein it in? Yeah.
I had a lacrosse coach, Rick Bontonomus. He was dude stud, right? Mr. Football and Mr. Lacrosse coming out of Canada, Villanova All-American, badass dude. And he saw some talent in me for lacrosse and did a lot for me. He knew I had, my dad wasn't around and I had some issues. And when I was going to quit, I hurt my ankle and I was like, yeah, man, I'm done with lacrosse. I'm just going to lift weights and get tattoos and whatever. I'm good. And he leaned into me hard and said, look, motherfucker, you're not quitting. You're coming back. I missed 5 weeks of the season. Just didn't even show up to practice. I was done, checked out. He brings me a new stick, goes, hey, come back on the team, whatever. I ended up being player of the year, San Diego that year. And after missing half the season, thank God, right? He brought me back and I was really grateful. And then when I got kicked out, man, he let me have it, right? He's like, dude, you have opportunities that you are not understanding. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I lack self-awareness on a massive scale. That was, if anything, my message is to guys that are younger or even coming up or any age is become more self-aware. Start to raise your consciousness up and go, zoom out. What am I doing here that is going to affect me negatively? What is causing me complication? What's causing me friction? Let's start subtracting stuff. Let's start locking it on, because there's no such thing as a small decision, right? The butterfly effect of stuff is massive. It's, how many people have you come across that may go to the bar and then they fucking get hit somebody. It's like, it was just a small decision. It was a small decision that turned into a life-changing event. And so I'm like, you got to be fucking careful, man. Strategic as shit about everything you're doing. Does it help me? Does it hurt me? More often than not, pleasure-driven, purpose-driven. If you choose purpose-driven, you're going to be fucking way better off than if you go pleasure-driven. That's always where it goes off the rails, always.
Where I want to go with this is, you bring up a great point that it's not one bad decision. I'm willing to bet, like, you got kicked out of high school. I'm sure I'm assuming it wasn't a one and done.
No.
You'd probably been given several warnings by the school.
Yeah.
And so where I'm going with that is, yes, you make that decision, you drink, you crash into a car, but I'm willing to bet most everybody has had those oh shit moments.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do this again.
Yeah.
Give it a day, give it a week. And all of a sudden you're right back to it. It's trying to find those bumpers in your life where I've got to, and you found it now later in life of, you got to get on that right path.
Yeah.
And stay on that path is the difficult part.
Yeah. It's those universal signs, whether it be from God, whatever anybody's faith is. The environment's sending you signs. You're going to hit friction point, small problem, bigger. And when your consciousness is raised, when you understand the rules of the game and what you should be doing and what you shouldn't, guess what? Your responsibility is raised universally. That's how it goes. Just like guys you've come across that, they make a small decision, then they make a bad call, then they're in a criminal, then they're stacking that, and then they're buried in state prison for years, right? Because it's progressive. Everything's progressive. It was like that for me. I am getting kicked out of the SEAL teams, right? It's like there were small things, a little slide, okay, slap on the wrist, slap on the pee-pee, then boom. I'm sure it happens in law enforcement too. It's recognizing those signs, and what it comes down to is ego. It comes down to, are you willing to just go, I should take that for what it is and really recognize it? But it's always, I'm good. That was nothing. We can justify. If you're justifying and negotiating, stand the fuck by. You got to stand by. And the staying on the path is a really important point, because, Paul, it's rooting your habits so deep. And this is what I beat the drum on, is rooting your daily habits, simple daily habits, not a bunch of, we don't need a 2-hour biohacking bullshit every day, right? We don't need it to get to some, but you better have some type of a system, because you're never going to rise to the occasion. You're always going to fall back to the strengths of your systems. You're never going to rise to the occasion in that combat scenario, or that guy it's always your worst day of training. That is how you're going to shoot. It's how you're going to move. It's how you're going to think. It's with you at your worst. That's what you're going to get to when it comes to this shit. So guess what? You better have a very simple, clean system that allows you to ground yourself, keep you on a healthy path. That's what I've found to be very helpful for me, to keep me on the path.
In high school, well, go back to your mom. Mm-hmm. You're living with your mom. In your mind, I'm sure, looking back on it, you were just pulling the wool over her eyes as far as what you were doing wrong. Yeah. Have you had conversations with her as an adult and kind of like, man, Mom, I'm sorry for everything I was doing? Because I'm sure
me and my mom are very honest with each other. Like, we have a very good relationship. I've always been real honest. My mom's hardcore too. I crashed a car when I was in like 18, when I came back from college and stuff, and crashed the car, was running from the cops, helicopter dogs, and they go to my mom's house. They're like, your son Taylor's running around in the neighborhood, and we're trying to. She's like, we got the dogs after him. She's like, let him fucking bite his ass. Like, my mom's pretty hardcore. And like, she's nurturing, but she wasn't soft on me.
Got it.
So we always can speak very bluntly, and I've always told her what was up for the most part. And she's read a lot of my book and stuff. I'm coming out with a book, so she's in the know. And I've told her, wow, I was a real asshole, and she all she cares about is talk is cheap, right? And so she loves what she sees now, helping people, me locked on, being a good guy for my fiance, just making better choices than maybe my father made, or just leveling up, which we have to do. And so that's, for me, the apology comes in how I live now.
And you knew you wanted to go into the military as a very young boy.
Yeah.
How did that part of it? Because I've even heard you say that you considered, or in your family, there's the service academy. I believe your grandfather. Mm-hmm. So you have that mindset as a kid growing up. I want to be a SEAL. I want to be in the military. But it still wasn't enough to kind of keep you on a set good path?
That was that lack of situation. That was that lack of self-awareness. I didn't understand the gravity of, dude, you can't get kicked out of high school and go to the Naval Academy. It doesn't work. And so that was when I was talking to the coaches, and then they stopped calling, right? And so that I still wasn't connecting the dots. I'm like, man, these motherfuckers aren't calling anymore. I got kicked out of high school. I couldn't play senior year. It was like, that was how stupid I was. I just was so blind to where then I get out of high school. I just was like, oh yeah, kind of free one, happy-go-lucky. And then I go to a D3. I'm like, oh, I guess I don't really have any other options. I go there and just fuck it off, right? And so that was, but part of the military piece, it kind of exacerbated the problem because I'm like, dude, I'll just fucking get power through high school and stuff. I'm going to the military anyway, but I have to finish college. So I'm just like going through the motions.
See, that's where I was wondering, where does that mix come from? You know, you want to go to the military, but you also know you want to go to college.
Yeah.
What was your plan going in? I want to go as an officer?
Yeah. Yeah, so my mom would have been mortified if I enlisted. That was like,
okay.
She was an officer's daughter. My grandfather was a captain, and and he was, up a rear admiral and worked in the Pentagon with Nixon. He was Nixon's nuclear physicist advisor, and so he had a lot of clout. And
what was your relationship like with your grandfather?
He started to get Alzheimer's when I was very young, so he went pretty quick. But I remember being young, fishing with him and stuff. He's just a really good dude. Really good leader. Really, my mom, he took really good care of his daughters. Just a good man overall. And all of his subordinates always said that he was amazing. So I was kind of unfortunate I didn't get a good relationship with him, but he left a good legacy because there was a lot of pride. There was a lot of, he's got a plaque at Naval Academy and stuff like that. So I always had a lot of pride in my family, in military and America, that whole, I bleed red, white, and blue, man. So but for me, I just still wasn't connected enough to understand that, man, you got to lock it on administratively. You can't be having legal problems to be an officer. Right. And also, I was like, well, I'll go be a SEAL, but I didn't understand. That was the truth. I was just like, I'll deal with it when I'm finished college. That was the truth. And so I understood a lot about SEALs, but I didn't understand officer and enlisted and the job descriptions. I didn't get into all that quite yet.
So when it came time to actually go into the military, you'd actually graduated from college. Mm-hmm. You ended up going to college in Northern California or Central California.
Yeah, after about 5 colleges and 3 junior colleges, I pieced my degree together.
And the University of County Jail.
Yeah, University of County Jail, pretty much. University of California, second choice, Santa Cruz. So I didn't get into UCLA or Berkeley, but I locked it on. I got really good grades for like 2 years when I lived in the basement of my aunt and uncle's house when I'm like, I got to get focused. So I had these like blasts of focus of real, like up at 4. I would come back at 10 o'clock at night after training Muay Thai and school and working landscaping and in fish. So I had like chunks of time, thank God, where I was zoned in and I knew I needed to catch back up. I would have sprints of focus and then I would kind of fuck off. And so I created a lot of problems in Santa Cruz. Got arrested a lot. Drunk in Publix, driving on a suspended, like just small dumb shit.
Just being a knucklehead.
Just knucklehead partying and shit. Not like breaking windows or causing problems. So it was just causing some ruckus. I was out there with a vest picking up trash a lot, man. People were like, is this your second job? Like, this motherfucker doing community service.
We don't pay.
I'm like, fuck, dude. So by the time I got out, I had to get off probation. So I requested to go to jail to commute my sentence. And that's what I did to even have a chance to talk to the military.
But the funny thing is you went to the Marine Corps first.
Yeah.
Because as you have said in other podcasts, even though you knew you wanted to be a SEAL, deep down you were scared.
Terrified.
And so, yeah. But the funny thing is the history of the Marine Corps is like, we'll take anybody. Yeah. And the Marine Corps said no.
Yeah. It was, because I tried to go officer first. That was a no-go. And they were my tattoos, I didn't have just back and stuff. And so a little bit on my arms, but nothing low. And so I didn't think it was going to be a problem, but they were not feeling how much of a percentage I had tattooed. They said, no way. And you can't even enlist. And they put a red hold on my account or name. That was a scary moment because I was thinking, okay. And then when the Army turned me down for background, I knew it was kind of real. And that's when the Foreign Legion came on my radar a little bit more. I knew of them as a kid, but that's when I really started researching. More
just because the desire to serve?
Desire to serve. I knew I wanted to be in the military. I needed to do that. I would have had a real issue with laying on my deathbed if I didn't do it. But I was really concerned about the money piece. I had a lot of student loans that my mom had co-signed on. Right, I had been on my name, but I'm not going to co-sign. Right. So I was like, man, I gotta get this figured out. I can't just go in the Legion. If I have to, maybe I'll figure it out. So that's when I went to the Navy, and they said they could work with what I had.
And that's one of where I really had a question. Have you ever found out the three branches of the military, they're all under the same freaking government. How is it that one says no because of your tattoos, one says no because of your background, and the Navy says, all right, come on, let's go?
I can understand maybe tattoos. I can understand maybe they have different policies, but the background is pretty cut and dry. And so that might be personal based, like the recruiter doesn't really want to deal with it. And that's why if any guys that listen into this are trying to get into the military, talk to multiple people, right? Because just because one guy doesn't want to deal with it, might be a little more headache to get you in. Talk to somebody until you get the right answer. And that's kind of what I ended up doing. And a guy that saw something in me and said, we could work with it.
When you were going to talk to the Army, were you trying to, and did they even offer an SF contract, or were you just going?
I went in to say, I'll do Ranger, or I wanted an 18X contract. I don't know if they had 18X contracts at the time, but I wanted to.
So there is a component of you're eventually going to need to get a TS clearance anyway.
Yeah.
So I could see where the background.
At least the secret. Yeah.
Now, the other thing I've heard you talk about is Navy said, yeah, we'll give you a shot. But then you had to do the PSTs for almost a year before you could actually get your contract.
Yeah.
So for that time that you're going every week to take the PST, are you in the Navy?
You're depped in. So it's called delayed entrance processing. So I signed a regular job. Aviation technician was one of the only jobs I could get. And I went through MEPS. And the reason is you have to be medically cleared and signed in the Navy with the ship date. So I had a ship date on aviation tech. So if I didn't earn my contract before then, I would ship on that original job.
And how much time do they give you?
It's just in between, whatever your time is. Mine happened to be pretty far away because there was just a lot of people trying to get in the military. So I had like 9 or 10 months or something like that.
Now, what year was this?
2010.
Is that something that's still common today? Will they still go through that? Can they still, somebody who wants to go that process?
Yeah, so the Army has 18X contract and the Navy has SEAL Challenge contract. So that's if you want to come in off the street into the pipeline, but you still have to roll. People want the safe bet. There's no safe bets. You always got to take a risk at some point. The roll of the dice in these capacities are you have to sign on a regular job in the military. And if you don't get that contract, guess what? You're shipping out on that original one.
You got into BUD/S what year?
2010.
2010.
Yeah.
Get through the first time?
I did.
No issues. You're one of the few that didn't deal with major injuries.
No.
I've heard you say something about your foot or something.
Yeah, man, Paul, you got a lot of good information, man. You got a good memory. I had a MRSA on my foot. I had boots that were a half size too tight, and I wasn't wearing sock liners. And just after the first few weeks of indoctrination at BUD/S, those Bates boots, they were just rubbing the top of my feet. I still got scars on top of them and with the sand and stuff. And man, my feet got infected. And even the Hibiclens and the stuff they give you wasn't working. And I couldn't get my feet in my boots. I had to cut them until actually fit. They were so swollen. And man, for 2 weeks I was doing this and just hurting, man. And every time it would get scabbed up, and then we'd go run in the ocean and it would feel good for a second and then burn. It was pretty brutal. And I would sit and we would on the blacktop, and after eating, we'd have 2 minutes to lay down on the fucking thing after eating food. And I'd put my feet up just to try to get I was having some low moments man, I don't know how I'm going to keep doing this, and I had a buddy who was like, dude, you got to go to medical. And he was a savage. He's operating the tip of the spear still now as a team lead. And he goes, dude, you got to fucking go, man. And I said, dude, I can't go there. That's where all the quitters are, man. And then they're going to drop me, if they see. He goes, you can't keep going. You're fucking can barely run. I said, all right. And I went, and the doctor gave me something to soak in. And thank God it was a Friday. So he had the weekend, and I soaked my feet, and it was like a miracle. And I went to the military surplus store, bought a used pair of the same boots, a half size bigger, and it fucking saved my life. And I never went back and I never had a problem since.
Coming out of it, through all the entire pipeline, putting in for your wish list, did you want a West Coast team or an East Coast team?
I requested West Coast, and I wanted to go to SEAL Team 7, but you can only request the Coast, and I got SEAL Team 7.
And for you at that point, and I've heard you say this, and I think it's very powerful to hear, you got there, but then you were kind of almost like, oh shit, now I made it, I'm all good. And didn't really kind of take that step back and say, but I've still got so much more to go.
No,
or did I misunderstand that?
No, when I got there, I was like, it's time to get it on. I was full tilt focused. Nobody was there longer than me. I was there first. I was working out at like 3 a.m. I was in the gym. I was terrified of not being prepared. And also I was like, any responsibility they offer, I'm going to take. Everybody went on vacation. I didn't. I requested to stay and to go to communication school. They sent me to Naval Special Warfare Comm School, which is not sexy. Anybody that knows, the radios don't get any lighter. You can't shoot away your radio and batteries. But I was like, I'll do it. And that was a good school. And that set me up for Joint Terminal Attack Controller course. And then it set me up for Sniper. And I got all that as a new guy. And I was there I was Junior Sailor of the Year or the quarter for, early promotes. I was one of the fastest promoted guys at that peer level. I mean, I was E6 in 4 years, and so I was already up for, so I was moving quick. And that was part of the problem is I was pretty locked on. I would party a little bit, but it was, just drinking beer. I wasn't doing like dumb shit. I was just kind of going hard, but I was focused when I was there, really focused. But some of the ego and the cockiness was coming up, especially after my first deployment. We could talk about that a bit, but I was what they call getting ahead of your skis. And guys know this. It's like this momentum. And I was peaking. And I always say, when you're peaking, man, be careful. Because when you're peaking is when your focus has to narrow. Your window's going to narrow. You got to focus harder. And when you're peaking, you're going to crash if you keep that speed up. And that's exactly what happened to me when I hit that guy in the bar. I was just like, speed up. I was, like those small signs. I'd gotten in trouble a year before. I kind of brushed under the rug, kind of in trouble. And then somebody pulled me aside in the parking lot. It's like, hey, dude, you're kind of like burning in, dude. Like somebody I respected. I'm like, I'm good. Man, right? Because it's the ego. I wouldn't listen. I couldn't hear it. I'm like, man, I'm fucking good, right? And that was literally that next weekend. That a few days later, this is when I got in trouble.
That's where I wanted to go with this. Looking back on it now, what could somebody have possibly done to try to help you rein it in? Man,
it's tough because it's like certain things you have to go through just to learn. And that I can't put it on anybody else.
And I'm not saying
I just don't know if anybody could have said anything.
Okay.
That's the truth is I don't think anybody could have been loud enough, mean enough, even if they would have sidelined me, I wouldn't have seen the problem. I couldn't see it and I still didn't see it after that, right? That's the thing is it took multiple iterations of this. And so I don't know if anybody could have said anything. That's the truth is I just couldn't hear it.
You ended up getting the worst of the scenarios was the bar fight where you ended up whole bunch of legal trouble. Yeah. But you've commented before that command was actually in your corner through the whole process. Oh,
they were so good to me because they're like, okay, it's the first time I've really been in trouble. They saw the video. So it was very apparent. Like I wasn't like causing ruckus, but I was violent in my action for sure. And so it was kind of this, well, okay. And he's on it. I owned it. I didn't go in there and make any fucking excuses, man. I was drunk off my ass. I couldn't control my emotions. Like just, they're like, okay. And so they sent me to the psychologist. They sent me to this, that. And I jumped through every hoop and just, it sucked getting pulled to the sideline. And I was taking care of all my legal stuff and flying back and forth and just hitting all the wickets. And so finally I was put back in the training pipeline. And that was it. And they were really good with me. And I'm still grateful for that. And they were good with me even the second time, right? I can't say enough good things about the SEAL leadership. If it wasn't, they couldn't have done anything. They did everything they could because they didn't coddle me either. I mean, I was reprimanded, demoted, fucking boarded. I had all my paid, docked. Like there was all the stuff they did to me. You know, I didn't get away scot-free. But, you know, there's only so much you could do. But they were supported me in terms of like, hey, try to protect me from Navy JAG as far as like not getting me kicked out after the first time, you know?
Was there ever a point where you were on the verge of having your Trident taken away?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it got taken away the second time, you know? So it got taken away the second time. There was, because I got demoted. I lost my top secret clearance, and this was a felony. It was done, right? And so that was part of the thing. They were like, hey, and that was a heavy conversation. That was the CO, me, and the command master chief. That was a powerful moment that, you know, I've spoken about online about what that exact scenario looked like. And so the first time, though, they were like, hey, you know, your top secret clearance is on freeze. I had to get all that back. And so there was a lot of legal hoops I had to jump through for that part.
Putting yourself back in your shoes back then. And where I'm really trying to go with this is if somebody's listening to this who feels that they're on that same path, and I appreciate the fact that you say there's nobody who could have pulled me off that set of tracks. I was on that train. I was the locomotive. But if you had the opportunity to go back, what would be something that could get you right? I
would say, and just on a pure level, like I don't think any leadership could have said a fucking thing to me. But I've been like, hey, dude, like it's I've been down this road. I'm telling you, you do not want to play with this fire. If this world that you're in that you've worked so hard for is worth that drink with that chick, then do it. But if it's not, I'm telling you, think it's always when you don't see it coming. Always. Nobody ever plans to go to jail.
Right.
Nobody ever plans to kill somebody. Nobody ever plans for this shit to happen. Nobody in prison planned for that shit to happen. Think about that. You're not unique. So when you think you have it in control, you fucking don't. If you think you've crossed all your I's and dotted all your T's, you don't. There's always variables, and it's always, that's what gets you. It's never the shit you worried about and predicted and planned for. So fucking think about that, right? If you want to be egotistical, this is what I would be telling myself. If you want to use your ego and say you got it all figured out and that you're the only one ever that's going to ever fucking not get burned playing like this, then fucking do it, right? And I would say go home and fucking think about that shit, man. For real, do you want to lose your whole SEAL career? Think about put that reality in your head. What is left after that's taken away, and sit with that for a night and then fucking think about what you want to do. That's what I would have told myself.
What caused JAG to finally get involved? Because you said command was keeping JAG off your back for quite a while. How did they finally stick their nose in it?
It was just because I was getting out of the shit the second time, because the cops dropped the charge. And on the second one, they're like, he was riding a golf cart, right? Fucking whatever it was they got me for, but it was just a small misdemeanor and pay a fine. So I was technically kind of getting through again with good lawyers and good connections. And they were like, JAG was like, fucking no way is this guy getting through again after this. So they drug tested me. I already got drug tested, but I passed. And then they're like, we're steroid testing him. There's no way the guy could have pulled out three tasers and fucking done all this shit if he wasn't on performance-enhancing drugs. So it was kind of unheard of. They sent the Olympic Testing Center, which is like cost thousands of dollars. And it wasn't that I'm a victim, man. You know, they were like, hey, fucking, we're going to get him. They did. Right? And so I lit that motherfucker up. You know, I was taking Winstrol and something else and testosterone. And so they're like, your levels are high, whatever. I didn't deny it. And I said, okay, well, I'll have the lawyer. We'll do it like this and process out. And that was what I did.
Does being on the sauce while you're an active SEAL, does that improve your performance, or is it just psychological improvement?
Man, I felt better. I was definitely stronger. I was faster. You know, I would definitely think, but I'm not of the camp that's like, man, how could they do that when I'm trying to do performance? Man, I also did it for aesthetics, right? I'm fucking fully honest. Like, I wasn't doing it for like all the not egotistical reasons too. So, but did it help my performance? Probably. Right? Did it keep me pretty fired up and motivated and like locked on? Yeah. Like I was still training fucking hard and I was on my third deployment. Right? Finished the full cycle and was going to, Iraq again. So I was, and that was, right when you're peaking again. I had gotten through all the stuff and corrected everything, and now I'm peaking again, and boom. So once again, that history repeated itself with the peaking and the momentum, and then fucking forgetting what steps you took to get you back. That's the piece that guys who have talent and drive, man, we do all this stuff and then we break it all down. And guys watching this know we're all no self-sabotage. It's fucking common as shit, especially with high performers and guys that driven alpha types. We can self-sabotage like a motherfucker. And whatever that piece is, that little character trait that we have, it's correctable if we're just very cautious when we're doing well. Whenever shit's going really well, and I go, all right, I'm going to dial it back a couple notches. I'm maybe moving, okay, because the ego picks up and the momentum picks up, and then the choices get worse. Right? They get a little bit looser to remember.
At the end of the day, to get to that level of professional performance.
Yeah.
Getting through SEAL training, deploying it with a SEAL team, there's a level of discipline, but you could also easily say there's a level of addiction to push yourself to those limits. So in turn, anything else you're going to do, drinking, drugs, whatever, is probably going to be to an addictive level also, or at least very likely.
Yeah, I would say it's less addictive, more abuse, right? It's like abusive because it's like full tilt, no governor. It's like, let's push this to the max. And also guys who are, in careers, law enforcement, military and stuff, it's guys that are, man, we manage risk. And we kind of push the line. I'm going to kind of drive the line a little bit. Why go into something that you could die every day? Why? Right? Especially you guys every day. You never know, pull up in a car. You don't know what the hell's going on. Why deal with that? Right? It's like, because you want to manage risk, push the line a little bit. And also when you're off, it's going to be that same trait for sure.
3 combat deployments?
2. So I had 2. The first one wasn't super hot. It was more like training the counterterrorism unit off the grid though, in a fob. So low visibility type situation. Then Iraq, and then 2 with the Foreign Legion.
When you actually got to that point, so as a young boy, I want to be a Navy SEAL, you get to the pinnacle of that point, you're deploying in a combat operation. How does it impact you mentally?
Man, I felt exactly like where I wanted to be. I was like it was like in my dream and my purpose. I would have been even better, but the only thing I was concerned about was my court case back in the United States. That was what was really fucking me up. Honestly, more than anything, the stress of that was massive. And so everything else was perfect except that.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because that in the interviews where I've heard you, that's one of the things that stood out in my head is you probably never had a point where you were ever, and I'll use the word relaxed. Your brain must have been going 100 miles an hour all the time. Because like you said, for those who haven't heard your story, you deployed to Iraq while on active probation and had to get permission to be able to deploy.
Yeah, but parole. I was on bail.
That's it.
Yeah, bail.
And you knew coming back, you were going to have to deal with this court case that you're looking at multiple years of prison.
Yeah.
So even though you're deployed, and I've heard you say that there was that thought of, man, I'll just basically go AWOL.
Yeah.
But you probably never had the ability to ever relax.
Oh, dude, that was a low time, because I would have watch on the roof, sniper watch at 3. It was my time. So I'd get up there at 3 a.m. and I would sit there in the dark and just drink my coffee and smoke my cigarette, sit in the sniper tower. I'm engaged, I'm watching, but and then they would start doing their, and I'd just be like, oh, dude, I got to go back and deal with this shit. Like facing 6 years in prison plus 3. And jury trial, full thing. And I'm like, and probably getting kicked out of the teams. Right. So that's still pending. And it was just absolute. I don't wish that on my worst enemy, that feeling for 6 months of dealing with that. And then when they come back and people are integrating back and getting their girlfriends, and I'm still like, in 5 months, I got to be, I'm still dealing with this. It was something else.
Were the rest of your team maybe in a joking way busting your balls over that? Or were they kind of leaving you alone?
They weren't really aware. I wasn't really reading people in on the full situation. And that was the truth. I wasn't reading people in on the gravity of what the fuck was going on. Like, I wasn't telling people I was facing 6, and they just knew I had some court case and whatever. That's all that was really said.
I just kind of figured that as small as the community really is.
Oh, they gave me shit on the way out. They took pictures of me coming out of jail and fucking bail. They were like, oh, this motherfucker. So I got my fair share of shit.
So you came back, You had to. It was time to face the music.
Yeah.
And that was in Utah, correct?
Idaho.
Idaho. Ultimately, the Navy said, thank you, but no thank you. What year was that?
So that was 2017.
And you mentioned that you saw the light at that end of that tunnel. You saw the headlight of that oncoming train that, hey, I'm going to be out of the, and you started engaging your networks. And I think that's an important thing to hit on from the transition piece is take the opportunity as a Navy SEAL or whatever these careers are. They afford us the ability to just get in front of people because of the uniform we get to wear. Yeah. Take advantage of that. And you started leveraging those connections you were making to get that job. So you knew there's no way out of it. I'm not saving my Navy career. Yeah. And when you got out, what was that part like? Because we're going to get into, you went into a really dark place, but it wasn't your initial step off. Yeah. It kind of came on a little bit later, but just that first transition out, how were you as far as your mental space? You know what? I was excited. I was feeling good. It was finally cleaned up. At least it was a resolution. That was what I was like, all right, we're in a resolution. I'm walking into a pretty damn good job. I had a beautiful girlfriend. I had a pretty good life. I'm like, all right, let's start walking into my next phase of my life. That's really, I remember sending my mom a picture and that was like in front of the job. That was the spirit of everything, but my habits weren't aligned with my vision. That was the piece that if I could look back and fix something, that would have been that. And that was the Adderall, Xanax. It was like, oh, it's prescription, whatever. And then weed was legal. So I'm like, I'm smoking weed at night and then I'm drinking at night. Right. So I was like, I'm not at work. I'm locked on. So that was the lying, right? If you're fucking lying to yourself but what happened was the friction started, in the relationship because you're not living right? The fish sticks from the head. If the man's not right, there's going to be things going on. So pay attention. If there's friction points, pay attention to what it's telling you. Drop the ego. And I couldn't do that. I was too immature. And so this went on for about a year, but I'm successful at work. We're doing, we did 19 million in sales the first, I'm doing things are going well. Then I transitioned into, the cannabis industry, doing, launching a company there. And now I'm raising capital and doing stuff. And now the opiates picked in at night, right? And so lying to myself. For you what's the longest you were clean during that? How many years total were you in the Navy? 7. In those 7 years, what was the longest stretch you were clean? 7. I never did any drugs or nothing during that time. When you got out, is it alcohol that leads to drugs for you or drugs that leads to alcohol? Well, it wasn't like I was doing illegal drugs. That's the thing, is it was prescribed, right? And so it was like from the psychiatrist. I'm like, I got out. Now I'm on Adderall. They say I got ADHD, which I don't subscribe to. I don't think people should go to the labels. I think any medications are very dangerous. It throws me off of so I don't take any anymore, right? It's because I would take the Adderall, then I'm like, I need to take a little edge off at night. This is really, if I could explain where it was, okay, I'll take the Adderall, but now at night I'm a little edgy, so now I'll take some Xanax, and now I'll drink, kind of take the edge off. Got it. So it was like doing this thing. And that was really what started the uneasiness, because in the SEAL teams, man, I'm sober, and I'm not drinking every day. You got shit to do. Also, I had a reason, right? I'm training for stuff. I'm doing stuff. Man, I just had to show up to work and go to the gym. I was still going to the gym and working out. And then I started sipping vodka at the gym at 5 p.m. I mean, it's 5, whatever. Now we're already kind of in relax mode. What caused you to get to a psychiatrist to where they actually prescribed the I just wanted Adderall because I knew I had taken it in high school and it fucking worked. And I knew it made you feel better. And that's really, it's a drug, man. It's an amphetamine. So make no mistake, if you think you're taking it because you're taking it because you like it, right? And so, you might be able to get some more shit done, but at what cost? Your fucking sanity. That was really what it came down to. So that was the flow of it. The pendulum was kind of getting a little more violent, and that's really what happened. And when the opiates kicked in and the fentanyl and whatever, and now you cannot keep your life manageable with that financially, just responsibly. Now I'm dropping meetings, I'm missing stuff and that I wasn't missing before. And like my boss said, the big boss, I was running for a VC company. He's like, you were a major asset, now you're a liability. That fucking, man, that was heavy because I was the golden boy. I've always been the golden boy and now I'm a liability. And that was like the first time I really had to hear that. And then my life
got stripped away. So now I had nothing to lie about, point to. Before I had the title, I was a CEO, whatever, the supervisor, raising money, and now I'm, CEO of a company and multiple, and so I had all, but then I'm almost in my truck with no money. Fucking has-been, loser, miserable. You can't lie that you know what the fuck you're doing, because the guy who is homeless in his truck doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. I got news for you, and that was me. Suicidal at that.
But you're not seeing that at that time.
Oh, I was.
Are you making excuses at that time?
No, fuck no. I had no more excuses left. That was when I decided to go in the Foreign Legion. So,
so this is then when you're in Hawaii.
Yeah,
because
Hawaii is your. This is the two. I'm kind of culminating in 2 years. Right. So that was 2 years to the day that I got out of the military to all that happened to where I'm sitting in my truck, suicidal. That was when I went, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Obviously, what I'm doing is not working, because I've just had rotating self-sabotage for years since I could remember. And this was a few days where I had to come to Jesus and get honest. That was the truth, is I had no more excuses. There was nobody around me to point blame on. Literally, I was by myself, right? There was just me and my decisions. And then once I got honest that it was all my fault, guess what? Now you're actually empowered. Because the victim mentality, which we see rampant in the fucking world today, which I think it's changing by podcasts like this and stuff, is that we talk about it as men, is that victim mentality it's disempowering, because it's putting external variables on the reason. You can't control that shit. When you decide everything's your fault, fucking you can change it. So that was the moment I got this, I call it the authentic voice of God spoke to me. He's like, man, you're being a bitch. Sack up, grab your nuts. You ain't killing yourself in this goddamn fucking jungle. Reset, man. Think about the damage you're going to cause. Like in our communities, man, suicide's a problem, right? Huge. And it's that purpose. When the guys lose that purpose, it's when a man with no purpose is hopeless. That's a very dangerous place to be when you don't see any hope. That's why you got to get into some, like you said, Paul, that next step, to be working towards that next thing. Set the stake. It doesn't have to be perfect, man. I didn't think the Legion was going to be my perfect out, but I just I'll fucking set the stake. Okay, now at least I got a bearing. Now start moving towards it, and you're going to start feeling better. And that's what I did. Well,
and you can relate to this, obviously, the amount of swimming that you did in the teams. But I believe I've heard you say that you swam when you were growing up in high school and stuff.
Yeah.
All you need is a sight point. At least you can get it. The line may not be perfectly straight, but at least you got something to aim for, as opposed to trying to do an open water swim with nothing for a bearing point. You're never going to make it anywhere.
No, you're going to swim 4 times as long to get somewhere.
Going back to that team mentality, I get the fact of what you're saying. You have to get to a point where you're at your rock bottom so that you could admit everything is on me.
Yeah.
But at the same token, the one thing that we all learn in these jobs is we don't do anything alone. It's all about a team. Again, I'm taking you backwards. Is there a way you could have put a team around you that could have been helpful?
The team was always around me. But
and not necessarily.
No, but I couldn't see it.
Okay.
Right? I couldn't see it. There's no such thing as a self-made man, right? We're not on an island either. I don't care how hopeless and alone you feel, you're not. Guaranteed, but because that optimistic window gets so closed and so selfish, depression's a selfish state. It really is. It's me, I. And so when you're focused, and I can say that because I was there. It's thinking about, I feel like this. Why do I feel? It's a lot of me and I's. So, but when you start opening, man, I had people on my phone trying to hit me up. I had turned my phone off. Right? I had friends and I had a massive network of people that I could have reached out to, but I was embarrassed, which I think is a lot of it. I was embarrassed. I was licking my wounds. So I think that there's a piece for that. I think that there's a time to lick your wounds and isolate, but not too long. Not more than a few days, right? Not more than that, because you do need time to quiet the noise. Sometimes extra inputs or just emotionally, we don't have the bandwidth. I'm sure we've all been there, especially any guys watching this. When your emotional bandwidth is just maxed out, you just can't even pick up the phone, right? And so I needed just that time to really come to Jesus and get honest and really go, okay, well, here's where I'm at. Okay. Then I reached out to my mom. right? That was the first person. Hey, I'm okay. I probably cut off. She's
the
like,
soft, cuddly. give you.
She's like, what the fuck are you doing? She's like, well,
but sometimes that's what you need.
She heard it in my voice. She was like, okay. I said, I'm at rock bottom. That's what I told her. I said, but I'm okay. I'm in my truck and I'm going to go in the Foreign Legion. That's what I told her. I said, so I have a plan. That's what I told her. So that's all she really needed to hear. And so I would say the team, you do have a team. If you don't think you have a team, you do. And you have a network of people who's willing to help out. But first get clear of what you need and what you want, because it's very hard for people to help you if you don't even know where you're at. People can't pull you. It can't. If you're lost, it's very hard try calling somebody and say, I'm lost, and say, where are you? I don't know. That's fucking impossible to save that person. And that's even just if you're in the practical sense. Imagine in the emotional sense. You really need somebody to go, okay, right? At least get honest about where you're at. You're like, hey, I have a problem with drugs, or I have a problem with alcohol, or I'm fucking depressed. Like, just be honest about how you're feeling and where you're at, or what's causing it. And then it's all good from there.
And the worst thing to have in that combination, though, is ego and embarrassment.
Yes.
Because those two are going to put such a huge barrier around you.
Yeah, that's a massively good point. I didn't think about it that clearly, but that's exactly what it was. It was my ego. Didn't want to, shatter it anymore, and my embarrassment, and that was building a massive wall.
For you, when you left the Navy and the teams, was there a part of you that intentionally cut ties with people that you were close to in the teams? And in turn, did you find that people you thought you were close to cut ties with you?
I would say I was pretty fortunate in that, because I kind of went into kind of a little successful trajectory, I still had a lot of my connections, and a lot of the close, and I still do, a lot of those connections I stayed engaged with because I was still kind of on this positive upward trajectory. I didn't really get cut from the community in that sense, or as far as I know. I'm sure some people are like, fuck this guy, but not anybody that I was close with.
You're in Hawaii, you're at your bottom of your bottom, you decide Foreign Legion is where I need to go. And you end up in Paris, France.
Yep.
I'm sure you've gotten this question a million times. We've all grown up hearing of the French Foreign Legion. How do you find out where to go?
Yeah, I guess I just Googled, and they might have had a website or something, but they maybe looking down some threads. Okay, Fort Nugent. I knew there was a couple different spots, and that's how I just kind of honed it in.
And getting in, well, first question is the Foreign Legion actually subsidized by the French government?
Yes. So the Foreign Legion is like in a branch of the military. So it's just like the Marine Corps or something like that.
What's the benefit to the French government to have it?
Some interesting benefits because, well, there's not the political pressure of French people come back in body bags. That was the real reason, right? And it's also, so that was the reason it was started, and why it's kind of still around is, it's a foreigner. And so you're not even a French citizen while you're fighting for them, and you're under a fake name for the most part.
So there are no French citizens who actually join the Foreign Legion?
They are. So it's like 5% or something very small. And when they join, their citizenship is not taken, but it's on their fake name that they get. It's changed to Canadian.
Got it.
So it shows them as a Canadian joining. And all the officers are French, though. They come from their Saint Cyr, which is their military, like West Point. And it's like a coveted spot.
So for you, once you got into it, and you've explained this many times, but it's quite the rigorous process. One of the biggest things is the complete lack of connection or communication with the outside world on the jump off.
Yep.
And then you get a new name, a new passport, and all that stuff. So you've got a commitment there.
Yep.
Am I wrong in its reputation as kind of being the land of misfit toys?
No, it's definitely that reputation. So there's 3 types of guys that join the Legion. There's the romantic, right? And the kind of the adventure seeker, the romantic who's, okay, my girlfriend broke up with me and I'm going to go to this, war. There's that. That guy gets smoke checked pretty with reality. There's the practical guy, which is doing it for the money and the passport. That's a big percentage too. You got to remember, there's a lot of guys from poor countries, right, that have militaries that they either can't get into or, they want to pass, but they just want to get out of their country. And so there's that guy. And then there's the machine of war, the guy who's seeking some combat or seeking some stuff. And there's that guy's either experienced in his own military, most are, and got in trouble like me, and their country doesn't do outside the country operations. Right? There's a lot of countries that don't operate like us. Like we're always deploying. There's a lot of countries that don't deploy, and they get paid more. So they're like, hey, I'm going to do operational experience and I'll get paid more.
I know you've said that you needed a reset, so to speak, but how does the Foreign Legion give you a reset?
I knew I wanted to write an interesting story, right? I knew I've always wanted to live a powerful life. So I knew that was part of it. It was just called to me. I wanted to see what the fuck was up. And okay. And also I wanted some more external validation. Man, I lost my SEAL title. Now I'm going to be a Foreign Legionnaire, right? And that was to fix that Band-Aid, put that Band-Aid that I hadn't quite fixed yet to kind of fix my identity, make me feel good about myself. And I just wanted some time and space to burn off with my old life. I also knew I was still in it. My habits were bad. I was sipping on a bottle of vodka before I went in to the Foreign Legion. So I knew I was still kind of like I hadn't needed to shake it up. And that's what I always tell guys who I work with is, man, shake it up, right? Mix it up. Move if you can. If you can't, mix up your day, change up your schedule, you got to put fresh energy into the system. And this was just a major influx of fresh energy. And I knew it was going to be disciplined. I knew it was going to suck. So I knew it was going to be a kind of a pain fest, which is what I needed.
I can't imagine an American former Navy SEAL is going to be welcomed with open arms.
No, I got a lot of extra love.
In the sense that you probably had a lot of more people going, what the hell are you doing here?
Oh, so many, Paul. I would be like, what the fuck are you doing here? But when I told my story, and I wasn't telegraphing the SEAL thing, I always tried to keep that under wraps, but people would find out. And I was, why would you join go from special forces? I'm like, I got fucking kicked out and this. And they're like, oh, okay, right. And so then it would have had to make sense. So like, well, why didn't you contract? And shit, people would ask, but for me, it wasn't about that, right? It was about, I wanted to stack my credentials a little bit, stack my resume, because I also thought I was going to go be a mercenary in Africa after. I thought that was the path. That was the reason. 26 countries in Africa speak French. So the strategic reason was I could command a lot more money. I could, because I'll speak French and English, and I'll have a Foreign Legionnaire background and a SEAL background. I'll be able to go make money in Africa doing that stuff. And so that was the quasi direction if I was going to go that way. So that's the angle why I approached it.
As soon as you start manipulating weapons, though, and moving in a tactical environment, you had to stand out like a beacon compared to everybody else there.
Yeah, there's some good shooters, but not as many as like had put as many rounds down as I had. So if we're doing some combat shooting and stuff, they're like, oh, yeah, this guy slams. This guy drives nails with that thing, right? It can be a FAMAS or an HK, it doesn't matter. Like I can throw down some rounds. And then moving in a tactical sense, I understood what was going on.
Do they quickly start pulling on that knowledge, or is it kind of like, hey, this isn't the American military. We don't care how you did it back home.
I was very good. I'm situationally very aware in that sense. And I knew when I wasn't trying to be a hero. I wasn't trying to be a Thursday All-American, right? And so I was like, I would do the drills just like they fucking wanted me to do. I never put in my input about nothing. I kept my mouth shut, and I just looked at it like whatever they want to teach me, I'll learn, and I'll take what I want and ditch what I can, but I'll always do what they want me to do. And if they did pull me aside, I'd work, they'd say, hey, sometimes they'd have me demonstrate close quarters combat or something. And I would do very, very cool and then slide back. And I would just try to roll low profile as much as possible.
If I'm picturing the movie in my head, I'm seeing the guy who just kind of blends off into the corner. But when he's called on, he's, hey, come shoot. All right. And he hits all the targets, boom. And I'm going to go back and sit in my corner. Not really trying to draw attention to yourself.
No, it's not. The Foreign Legion is not the place you want attention. It is because, like they said, they're not interested in egos there. They want you. It's a top-down organization. It's shut the fuck up. Go, right? It's don't ask questions. There'd be time we'd be on missions and stuff. We didn't know where the fuck we were going. That's serious. They would tell us right before we would get out of the door. Right? It was very, very top down. You know what you need to know when you need to know it, and that's it. And everything else is, and also very strict as far as discipline. Very formal, very under your thumb. So it was you just want to kind of as smooth as possible.
But overall, are the living and operating conditions very austere, very bare bones basic?
I would say it's very like Eastern Bloc-esque. It's also got that culture. It's France still, so it's not, harsh. But it's cold. The buildings are cold and stuff doesn't work. And, you're out in the field a lot and you're sleeping in tents. You're not in hotel rooms with rented Tahoes like I was as a SEAL, man. Definitely not. And that's what made it hard for me. It was like I said, I call it a baptism in humility. It's the only way. It was what I needed, though. It was like first of all, my name was taken, right? I was a totally different person, literally. It was clean this toilet, man. It was fucking, hey, get up. The piss overflowed. Fucking, picking it up, scooping piss up with dustpans, man. Fucking all night. So I got a little extra love, and so I was all fine with that because I went in knowing that. So it wasn't shocking. I went in knowing I was going to be cleaning and working in the kitchens and stuff when we weren't training and stuff.
In a weird way, it's an experience that I'm assuming you probably never had in the Navy.
Yeah, I really didn't have that experience at all. So I didn't do that stuff in the military, right? I went right into the SEAL community, which was different, but I was in this like stoic kind of like Chinese Zen proverb mode where I started to really research into that stuff. And this is where because it was such a brutal realization of like needing to be humble, shoving that humble pie down my throat. I was like, well, how do I use this to kind of just grow from it? And so when I'd be cleaning toilets, man, I'm like, what does this teach me? Like, I would allow myself to try to actually grow and think about and read quotes and things that helped me and people that were very difficult. I'm like, what is this guy trying to teach me? And try to look at everything from a kind of a esoteric kind of place. And that's really what helped me. And that's what started my path of this internal self-development, is just kind of managing my surroundings and just being like, well, my surroundings don't really matter. As long as my internal state's good, then I can be all right. And that was the truth. And once I started to lock those pieces on, man, I was in a fucking great mood. And I was like, man, if I can be in a great mood here, I could be in a great mood anywhere. And that's why it's like, I can teach people how to do this. And that's what I ended up doing now. But going back when I showed up and then I got to go to the jungle, I deployed down to South America doing deep jungle operations and shit. And then to Estonia with NATO on the Russian border and Vigiprat, anti-terrorism, domestic missions, internal France. So I got to do some cool shit and everything's in French. I'm speaking French with a beret. It was a trip. It's a trip looking back.
I'm assuming they're probably not very patient for you to learn the French language early on. It's like,
my head's like this table, man, when it comes to French, because also our California accent doesn't blend well. So when I speak French, they're like, oh, my accent's I just butcher it with the it's very hard for us. And also I was a little bit older, so the language didn't stick as well. So my French was terrible. I can get by and I could speak if I need to, but it's like, it was never smooth.
You've got Southern California in it, but you've got a little bit of that Boston growl too.
I got a little blend, so it made it even worse.
You're already working with an accent.
I'm working with a few things that aren't blending well.
What's the commitment for the Foreign Legion as far as time?
5 years.
And did you know it was just 5 and out?
Yeah. So I knew it was going to be.
Because you mentioned you wanted to go down to Africa.
Well, because I wanted to make money at some point, and Foreign Legion is not where you're making money. So I knew I wanted to transition to that. But for me, I was so like, I didn't have a wife. I didn't have kids and stuff. So I'm like, well, what am I going to do? And so there was some options to go. There's commando units and some other stuff. But after, the time, I realized I didn't want that. I wanted more in my life. And I wanted my autonomy back. That was the truth, is there was just no autonomy. And I just wanted to be able to go to the beach if I wanted or whatever. And the Foreign Legion's pretty tough on the autonomy, lack of autonomy. Even when you start getting the time, too, that the Foreign Legion requires of the non-commissioned officers and everybody. I mean, you're there on Christmas Eve. It's mandatory, right? Everybody. You're not going home. Like it's mandatory. There from the officers, everybody, the general.
Is there some sort of tradition or something for Christmas Eve?
Yeah. So that's just an example, right? You're there. You're there for the men. The Legion is your family. Legion is ton famille. It's votre famille. It's that's the culture, because you got to think back to the history. There was guys coming from, the ne'er-do-wells from all over the world kind of coming in, and they don't have family. They're all ghosts, right? They're all ghosts. And so you're all there together in Algeria and those guys. So it was that culture's kind of still fostered there.
Did you ever find that, did it ever get to a point in your heart where you felt, say, the same way you did in the teams, or was there always that sense of separation with the other men that you were with?
No, I never got that there. I never got that same. The Legion was, you got some friends and stuff, but the job satisfaction there is rough, right? It's a lot of guys who have to be there. It's not guys that are there and they're tough guys coming from tough countries and tough places. And it's that culture's even the general and the officers are tough on the non-commissioned officers who've been in for 20 years, right? It's very, and that tension gets pushed down, right? So it's a tense environment.
From the officer down, being that the officers are all French and it's a coveted spot, is there a little bit of them almost looking down on the non-commissioned staff because they're not French?
Oh, there's a little bit of possibly looking down is a way to put it, but there's definitely a separation. I'm French, right? And that culture's kind of been brought down. They work together, right? There's still collaboration, and they understand a lot of these guys have a lot of experience too in Afghanistan, a lot of stuff. So, but there is definitely, don't ask me questions, right? Don't ask fucking questions. If I do something wrong, there's not a lot of debriefs where officers admit when they've done stuff wrong, right? That level of accountability is not there. If they do, it's on there, so we never see it, right? And so there's definitely that. That was a thing I saw in the Foreign Legion, which was interesting, is there's no like hot wash. There's no debrief, which was massive in the SEAL teams, which I loved. From top down, every guy goes down and talks about what he fucked up on an op, on training. I'm sure you guys do it too. It's, hey, this is where we could have proved it. Because man, mistakes are written in blood, right? Let's teach. That doesn't happen in the Legion. It's very, mistakes are it's guarded.
Was there ever the opportunity for you or another NCO, somebody who was non-French, to ever make it to an officer status? Yeah. They would actually allow that?
Yeah, they do. And it happens in a few instances. It's usually guys that come in that are pretty stellar. They come in young and they go through the non-commissioned officer routes. They get there and then they'll transition and they'll go to the academy.
Got it.
Yeah, so it does happen. But I had an African captain just before I got out.
Did you ever actually get to a point of actual combat engagements with your team?
No, well, we had some sketchy stuff down in the jungle, but I wouldn't call that a combat operation, right? It's kind of just...
I'm just going to, when it actually came down to, bullets back and forth, was the guy to your left and to your right standing with you, or? No,
we never got to that issue, that point in the Foreign Legion, right? Even in with NATO up in the Russian border, we're not in Ukraine, right? And so it wasn't, that hot combat wasn't, I didn't experience that.
What is the Foreign Legion's primary mission then?
Combat, but there's only so much war. You know what I mean? There's only so much.
Hey guys, get out of the way. We want to get in.
Well, there's only so much war, right? Even in Africa, because the Foreign Legion is in 4 countries in Africa currently. They're in Afghanistan. They're in Iraq. So when Afghanistan got drawn down, and now they're prepping for Ukraine, right? It happens, but it's just a rotation. But they're dealing with spotty groups of terrorists in Africa. So it's not like for America, like in Iraq for 20 years, and it's just different. The Foreign Legion was there, but just wasn't at the time as I was there.
Well, they have primary direct action, like during the GWAT. Did they have direct action mission?
A lot. So they do a ton of that. So that's a massive. There's a ton of guys with combat experience in the Foreign Legion, and so it's just timing.
You came to the end of your time and started making videos, and I think that's when I first saw one of your videos. But that kind of put you in the middle of the frying pan, so to speak. Yeah. How did that resolve itself?
So it resolved itself legally, and I had to fucking leave. That's how it resolved itself, because they were like, well, you take your stuff down or we're putting you in jail back to back to back to back until we kick you out or until you take it down. I wasn't doing that. So, and I was 6 months out anyway. So I was like, well, talk to my lawyer. They're like, well, they gave me a break from, because I actually technically had an injury, right? Which was, they were trying to fix in the hospital, thank God. So I had some separation from it that they're like, hey, he needs to heal at this house, private residence. And they were like, well, so their hands were kind of tied. So I was still pointing out these videos. They're like, well, you need to take them down. But I was already getting a ton of emails from guys who were like, you saved my life. I was going to kill myself. I just had a guy today who was like, dude, I had a pistol in my mouth and pulled the trigger. And then I saw your video, right? He said it jammed. He goes, and then I saw your video and I knew it was like a sign. So, and I get hundreds of those, hundreds. And so I was not taking shit down. It was a fucking push from God. I swear to God, it was nothing. I didn't care what they were going to do to me, man. And so I was like, no, I'm not taking it down. So that is not going to go well. If you can imagine me saying no to the general.
Is it because you were in uniform or because you were mentioning the Foreign Legion or both?
It started because I was in uniform, but I also wasn't saying anything bad about Foreign Legion. So they weren't coming at me hard because they're like, he actually is kind of saying some good shit. And I still do. I really think the Foreign Legion is a great organization. If people need to get they have a ton of good history, good training. It was great for me. So I have really nothing but good things to say about the Foreign Legion and what they offer me. And I'm grateful, but some irreconcilable differences. There was just no way I was taking it down. There was also no way I was going on food discipline. I'm not a citizen, mind you. So people were asking like, oh, you should have finished your contract. First of all, I feel like I had a calling from God to do what I was doing. So I don't care what people say. Secondly, I never signed anything that said I shouldn't be doing that, right? So I didn't, and if I did, it was in French. I didn't know what the fuck it was anyway. And I wasn't saying anything detrimental. So there was like a few things going on. And because I also transitioned, I needed to prep my out. And there's no programs in the Foreign Legion for when you're getting out. I would have been getting out with zero movement if I wasn't prepping something. So there was like, I wasn't going to do what I did last time and mess it up. So I wanted to get my habits good, get my next career set. So there's like strategic things I had to do for my life and my family. That was the bottom line. Also, man, I'm not a citizen, so I don't have any rights. They could put me in jail on food discipline, bread and water if they wanted to,
right, for
months, man, and have any repercussions for that. So my lawyer was like, dude, you got to leave, beat feet, right? And so that's what I did. So I talked to them. I had a medical thing that they said, hey, Foreign Legion said, you know what you can do is you can claim emotional distress and get a medical discharge from the military and they'll pay you to get out to do this like formally. I said, fucking, I'm not doing that because I'm not I'm not emotionally distressed and I don't want the French government needing to pay me for the rest of my life. So they said, all right, well, so that was it. So I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go to jail. So I had no other options. I told them no.
But are you officially done? I mean, have they
our contract's done. Yeah, we're definitely kicked loose.
But I mean, is there anything formally in the sense that you're formally done other than just expiration?
No, I'm done. Yeah, the contract was broken in January.
When did you know that? Was there a single moment or a single event that you said, okay, here's what I want to do. I want to take all the shit that I've screwed up in my life, show people that you can make all these mistakes, correct it. But now, not only that, I want to start giving back. Mm-hmm. Like you said, writing a book, helping other people. Where does that come from? When did that happen in your life?
So I was still figuring shit out, but I started to really get locked on 2 years in. Like I started to really feel like, because I mean, I was still licking my wounds. I had some emotional like feelings of loss and isolation. And about a year in, I go, all right. I looked at my body, man, I was stripped down, man. I was like, just stripped down physically, emotionally. I was broken. I said, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to start rebuilding. Started lifting again, training again, just getting in the flow. Then about a year in, I started ratcheting down my daily habits, started reading about the Greeks and the samurai talking about the hour of the tiger, 3:30 in the morning and all these times. And then the hour of the gods and man is most aligned with his purpose. And so I started getting up earlier than the Legion even made me get up. I started getting up at 3:30. We had to get up at 5:30, get up at 3:30. Training in the bathroom every day, no days off. Not killing myself doing burpees, but just up, being reflective, being grateful, visualizing every day, keeping my macros tight, really learning about macronutrients, which I had never really done before, learning about hydration, learning about just being involved in self-development and doing just small daily habits because it's all I had. Right? My whole life was stripped down. I had a fucking phone in a bag in a barracks room. And that's when I go, there's no other external validation that I can, there's no other unit to go to. I need to validate myself of my daily habits. So once I started doing it, I started feeling better. That's what I tell guys. I go, first, if you're trying to fix your problems in your life and you're not fixing your daily habits, you're backwards. Don't put the cart before the horse. Start with your morning. This is what I go systematically through with guys. I go, start with this wake up time. Start taking these supplements. Start reading these books. Start getting up and doing these things. Start training like this, eating like this. Build it. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's this tightening of the dial. It's like a boa constrictor. It just gets tighter. You let the breakfast then you get all the days, all the pieces of the day stacked. Guess what? By the time you lay in bed, you're proud of yourself. Then you hit that shit on repeat. Rinse and repeat again and again and again and again. And that way, okay, now your optimistic lens opens up. Now your life's more manageable. Now your energy's better. Now better opportunities come to you. And when they do come to you, you're fucking ready to handle them.
Going back to the team mentality. So when you decided that this is what you wanted to do, did you seek any type of mentor or any help? Yeah, I had a couple mentors I reached out to that I always liked, that I had been in contact with before I got in the Legion, but I just wasn't really right yet. And I just, saw different mindset guys in the space, and so I followed, and I really was like, man, dude, I really like how these guys do it, but I can do shit better, right? I know I know a different niche that I could hit, and I know I could communicate these messages effectively for people, for it to resonate, because man, I've been low. I have been suicidal in the truck with the shotgun, ready to end it. That is a low point, and I've been there when guys have been there and they're like purposeless, hopeless, don't see a way out, just tired. That was the truth. Tired of fucking trying. And I was like, dude, it will go away. It will pass, but you just got to start putting a little bit of work in, chop the wood, just start hacking away, build the body back, build the mind back, build the soul back. Going back to that embarrassment piece though, when it came time to actually stand in front of another person or a group of other people and be vulnerable to say, hey, this is all of the shit that I've screwed up. How hard was that for you?
It was easy. It was easy because I was good. It's hard to do if you're still in it. You won't be able to do it for the most part because there's no redemption. Man, you don't want to be talking because it's embarrassing, right? If you're still in it, I couldn't have got up and spoke about how I had fucked up if I was still in the truck, right? If I was still in it, because you don't have a platform to speak from about, hey, you can maybe, but it would have been very difficult for me. For me, it was like, man, I feel great. Here's what I did, but I'm all transparent about it, right? Here's what I did, but here's where I'm at. That's the most important piece. And so for me, it was simple, and it also felt necessary. Not for me, but for other people. And so I feel like, fuck Taylor Cavanaugh. It's not me. I'm just a conduit of information. I'm just a person that was brought through to be a vessel, man. And so that's honest. I've gave up on myself a long time ago, right? And I'm really for other people now. I try to transcend self as much as possible. And everything I think about is, man, how could I convey this message? How could I communicate this lesson? I have to get up every day because I fucking film it, right? And I do it for a reason. So people see no deviation. When I got out of the military, so I had so many naysayers like, oh, he's out of the Legion. Watch, he's going to fuck off. He's going to be back in jail. I was like, no, fuck that. And fuck you. Watch this shit. And I've just built my life up more and more and more and more and more. And I've just been massively successful because I don't miss. I have not changed a fucking thing from when I got out of the barracks room to now I'm making way more money, have the way better life, beautiful feel. Nothing's changed. Nothing. If anything, it's gotten tighter. That's the key is what guys, when you get out of the military, if you were disciplined in the military or law enforcement, be more disciplined. You have to be. You have to ratchet it down. Don't lighten it up. Get up earlier. Institute more discipline on yourself. You're going to benefit from it.
You said you gave up on Taylor Cavanaugh, but it almost to me sounds more of you're giving to. And what I mean by that is...
Yeah, it's a good way to say it.
Your new purpose and your new mission is the ability to take what you've experienced and give that to somebody else. Yeah. But in turn, that makes you stronger every day because you almost become their rock, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that. That's said better because I guess I just mean I gave up on my desires. right? I gave up on and I really started paying attention to like a lot of the shit I want to do is fucking not beneficial for me at all. For the most part, it's like, I want to do this or I want to do that. And it's like, man, fuck me, man. You know? And so that's because that led me astray before. And it's still possible today. I'm not some solved piece in glass. Like I still have those thoughts, those desires, those old tendencies, that old way of thinking that tries to pull me in directions every fucking day, you know? And so I got to be cautious. And that's why I keep the foundational principles the same. So I stay busy, don't have a lot of idle time, and I stay focused in purpose. And it keeps me out of trouble.
Your company today, what services do you offer to your clients?
Coaching, right? Mindset, lifestyle, fitness, habit building, reset. Also, you're your highest ROI. You're in business. So I have a lot of CEO clients, doctors, lawyers. If they're feeling the speed wobbles, so I say, if you're feeling the speed wobbles in your life, you're having friction in the relationship, if you don't feel good, that's wrong. Let's fix it, right? Like we examine your day, you pull it apart, strip it down, we reset the daily habits, get a clean blueprint. Everybody just needs a clean blueprint that they can start operating from, because it will branch out. We tailor it, we customize it. But once you get a clean blueprint, there's so much fucking information. It's analysis paralysis. That's how it was for me. Is it carnivore? Is it keto? Is it planned? Am I fucking sleeping 8? It's like, am I red dot, cold plunge? Who the fuck knows? I'll tell you what, I'll show you what worked for me, what works for me consistently. And I just go do this, start here, and then get you momentum and some space from the habits you have now, the decisions you're making now, the life you're doing now, so we can get some fresh energy into the system, get your mojo back so you can start seeing the clarity, and then you can start making better choices, better decisions, and you'll know better avenues to take. And your business is going to be more manageable. Your family's going to be more manageable. You're going to start making more money. I have real estate agents and guys who have been on my elite program that came to me. They're like, man, I'm starting to be low on the sale list, this and that. Now they're making millions of dollars, better than they have ever have. And they stick with me because they're like, man, this is working. I'm not going to change anything, right? Because we can always tighten the day, always tighten the fitness, always tighten the macros. There's no end here, right? You never arrive at some finished state, evolved state. It doesn't happen. And in the second you think you did, you're going to start falling back. So that's why it's always helpful to have outside accountability. I have it, right? You always have somebody that can poke holes in your game. Michael Jordan has a coach. Tom Brady's got 6. It helps you, hey, do this. I mean, think about it like this. We can't see it in our own because we're wrapped in it, right? When you have that outside unbiased perspective, first they can be honest with me about what they're going through, dealing with. Sometimes it's more psychological we deal with. Sometimes it's more fitness. It's I do one-on-one Zoom calls with everybody, right? So that's part of the process other than the plan.
Going back to the old Taylor, today, are you more open to whether it is somebody who you deem as one of your coaches or just a peer going, hey man, you look like you're getting close to the off the rails, or does ego still creep in for you? Man,
I think probably, if I were going to be honest, I'm sure I have ego still. I think it would be me having too much ego to not admit that, right? I definitely have to be cautious of my ego, but I'm wiser now to listen to people I respect. That's the other key. Is like, man, you got to have a life I want for me to really listen to you, man. If you're going to somebody who I really respect, and they're like, dude, you're fucking, I'm going to take that to heed. And more than what I'll do now is stop what the fuck I'm doing. Slow the fuck down. If I'm going in a direction, someone's like, hey, dude, you're doing way too much. I would literally go home, stop, reset, go back to the drawing board and start pulling things away again, pulling unnecessary things out and start stripping it back down to where you get to where you've got that positive momentum again and you're not getting speed. What happens when you get speed wobbles? You got to slow down, right? To get back control. That's exactly the way I would think about it.
For your clients, what's a minimum commitment with you? Like if I was to come to you today and say, hey, it's day one, how long am I looking at for a minimum commitment working with you? So
3 months on the mid-level, and then I have a month kind of a blast course on the elite. But most guys are 3, 6, or a year. So 3 months, 6 months, or a year.
And are you planning everything for me in the sense of, hey, get me on a workout plan, get me on an eating plan, all of that? Or is it kind of on me to kind of, hey, you just got to start working out?
No, I do it all. So I'll give you your specific macronutrient numbers, how to track them on the app, give you all the guidance for it. wake up time, supplements, all these pieces, Zoom calls. And then on the Zooms, I get really honed in on the deliberate mindset and visualization training. So during morning process, I coach guys. This is one thing I'm very powerful at is visualization, manifesting, not manifesting like some 13-year-old girl, seeing very clearly where what we need to align with so we can align our daily habits and actions so we can actually get there, right? Like Bruce Lee said, it's that subconscious mind. It only understands what we tell it in pictures. We need it to be solving problems for us in the background. So once it understands where we're going, who we want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 1 year, how do you want your family? How do you want to feel in that picture? Right? You see that again, every morning, again. That habitual construction is powerful, right? Because it starts to rewire yourself for the cellular level, start to rewire pathways. This is what really where the gold's found for guys, because I have a lot of guys who have a lot of combat experience, bro. I have SAS operators, bro. I have guys all over Marines who've gone through some heavy shit. What really helps guys is, sure, you got to start building the self-worth with the better daily habits. We start there. Start building the body. Then we start working the mind, challenging that internal state, raising our consciousness, really starting to become aware of how we're thinking. When am I in a negative state? Tools to actually go, okay, I'm in a negative thought pattern. Am I hydrated? I probably haven't gotten any sun. It's usually when we're in a negative thought pattern, all these things. Okay, 5 minutes, fix yourself, get yourself to bed. It's just slight tools. And then also seeing very clearly who we want to be so we can evolve there.
It's shitty to say that this way. And I don't mean it to be any way disrespectful. It's sad what you had to go through to get to here. When you hear the totality of the story, you see so much potential in so many little points in your life. You could have gone towards the football or lacrosse route. Who knows where that would have taken you? Had you made it to a service academy, who knows where that would. But the thing I'm big on is, we can all sit here and woulda, coulda, shoulda our lives. Mm-hmm. If you're happy with where you're at today, make the most of it. Yeah. If you're not, make the changes that you need to make.
Yeah, I like that.
You can't go back and change the past. Yeah. Where I'm getting at is, do you ever see, or have you had the opportunity to make the full circle and go back and maybe talk to young SEALs and say, hey, brothers, this is where I messed up. Don't make these same mistakes, because unfortunately, the stories that we remember are the shitty stories that have the good ending.
Yeah.
Some guy get up on stage and go, man, my life was perfect. I was the water polo captain in college. I came into the SEAL team and I breezed through, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's not.
There's no adversity.
Yeah.
Have you had that opportunity?
So I get the opportunity every day, with a lot of clients. And so in that capacity, I do guys who are actually going in the pipeline, guys who are having struggles. But as far as formally, I haven't gone down to speak to a group of SEALs per se, but I have dudes reach out and said, hey, dude, man, I'm in this kind of spot, and I'll talk to them for a little bit and be like, hey, so here's something to think about, and I'm blessed in the sense that I'm blessed with pain. I'm blessed with a little bit of, I wouldn't even call it tragedy because I did it to myself, right? I would call tragedy like external things. I was just blessed with making a lot of poor choices, which is a weird way to say it because people will listen to me. Right, because I've done certain things that people are like, okay, he knows those lows and knows those bad decisions. He understands what I'm going through, right? This legal trouble, here's how to navigate this correctly. Let's not make this worse, which is what a lot of I do is, because nobody reaches out for help and listens unless they're going through something generally, because that's what it is, that gift of desperation. So they'll reach out. But, if that opportunity presented itself, I have been asked to go speak to groups of Marines and stuff. We just got to organize that. That's actually in the works. So so I would tell them exactly this stuff. Man, be smart about your decisions, right? Don't lose your wits, right? Drink too much, man. Be careful, right? Also, it's not even just about that, because that's difficult to stop once it starts. Don't put yourself in a bad situation, right? Take inventory of what's important in your life. If it's worth risking, then okay. But if it's not, at least be strategic about it, and at least be deliberate about what you're doing.
And the reason why I say that is because all of us that I'll put in that category of type A's, the first responders, the veteran community, if you were a new guy and you had some 20-year senior chief come in and give you a block of information on combat, and you had a brand new lieutenant come in, you're inherently going to listen to the 20-year Master Chief just because we all go, he's been through more shit.
Yeah.
You know, the same way with you. You have that ability walking onto a stage already. And again, I don't mean this disrespectfully. You bring a garbage ton of baggage up onto the stage.
I understand. Yeah.
That immediately draws people to go, shit, my life wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
And look where he's at now.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's why I think it's a blessing. And that's why I also think it's a responsibility for me. Because those lessons were festering in me. And that's what was feeling. I was feeling that, man, I got all these lessons that I could actually, and I'm so grateful. Not thousands of people I've helped, clients, thousands, right? About 1,000, I should say. And man, I'm grateful because, man, people's marriages are better. People's are still in the military. People got in the military. People are getting out of legal trouble. People, all these positive things. I got dude lost 100 pounds, right? And lost, multiple. I seeing this positive momentum, the ripple effect. And that's what if anything that I think my message boils down to, I know my message boils down to is empowerment. Empower yourself first. Then you can help your family. Don't be that guy that's like, well, I'm living for my family. Fuck that. You live for yourself first, man. Because if you're just a hollow shell walking around as a hologram for your family, that ain't fuck all. It's not enough. You have to be solid, right? What do they tell you? The mask drop down in the airplane. Put your mask on first. Put your mask on first, man. You got to make. How do you set a good example if you're not a good example? How are you trying to raise somebody better than you if you can't figure it out yourself? Figure your shit out. Invest in a program if you have to. Get some. If you haven't figured it out now, you ain't figuring it out. I got news for you. There's plenty of information out there. You haven't applied it yet. And so let's get it honed in efficiently so I can get you some momentum and get this fixed. Everything else stems from that, the ripple effect. Man, we get our families good. We get ourselves good. Family's good. Community's good. That's how we fix what the fuck's going on in this nation. We see what's happening, man. And I'm not some grandiose idea of fixing the fucking planet. That's not what I'm saying. But man, let's fix ourselves so we can start setting a better tone, because this pendulum of fucking lack of accountability and victimhood is laughable. I mean, you've seen people out in the streets going, man, let's fix this, man, and bring it back to what America's core values were, which was men being men, taking responsibility and handling business.
Well, and you bring up a great point too, is if we stop spending so much energy trying to think outside ourselves, if you just focus on yourself, what you end up doing is you become a mirror for somebody else to fix themselves.
Yes.
Hey, look at that guy squared away. And pretty soon, like you said, the ripple effect. If people start pinging off you and improving themselves, you're fixing the world outside.
Yes.
Just by focusing on yourself.
And then everybody benefits, right? Everybody benefits. And so don't make the mistake and don't lie to yourself that you're doing stuff for other people when you're not doing anything for anybody when you aren't correct. That's the truth.
For somebody who's in your shoes coming out and they believe that their experience and their story and stuff could go the same route of coaching, what advice would you have for them getting into this space?
I would say get clear on what your message is, right? Get really clear. If you do, got to get with somebody that can actually kind of show you how to roll this stuff out, because there's stuff to understand. Messaging is important, right? And understand it's not about you. Every YouTube video I do is one take, no edits, none. Since the first one, 91, I've done two a week that's like started this. I do no edits, no retakes. Why? Because it's not about me being perfect. It's not about me not fumbling a word here or there. The message isn't for me. It's for them. When you start putting out and you're like, oh man, I didn't look good in that. Or I'm going to delete. And if you're taking multiple takes, you're being a fucking asshole, right? Man, send it. Speak from the heart. You don't need a lot of whiz bang shit when you're speaking from the heart. If you feel like if you have imposter syndrome, guess what? You're being an imposter. You're not living it. This shit, if you feel like you have imposter syndrome, you got more work to do because you're trying to teach something you haven't done yet. That's the truth. So if you're experiencing that, go back to the drawing board. You don't need some long, crazy story like me, right? You don't have to go to prison or do this or like, man, but you could be a beast on discipline, right? You don't need shit for that, man. Can you live the perfect day and videotape it and show people what happens when you live I know I can't, I'm not perfect, but maybe you could be more disciplined than me, right? Everybody can have an edge. You don't need some crazy story, but you can be excellent, right? And so be excellent and then teach what you're excellent at. So for me, it's I know how to reframe. I know how to get positive. I know how to maintain a positive mental attitude. That's what I'm good at. And so that's what I teach, right? And how to visualize, how to achieve goals. And so that's what I teach. But everyone's got to have their angle. Your area of expertise, be an expert at it. Then live it, right? You can't get online and preach some shit about, okay, not missing, and then miss. That's the truth, right? Because then people can read authenticity or not. Nowadays, we see so many people, our ability to read body language is massively powerful these days. So you better come with it, because people are going to read bullshit real fast. Come with it, live it, and it'll flow, right? It'll just embrace it and understand there's no rules. Get creative, right? There's no rules here. So if you really have a message that you want to share and you know that's going to help somebody, share it. Don't hold it back, right? This is about letting it go, man. If you really think it could share one. There was a year I was doing social media, I was speaking to 34 people. To myself, I would have people ripping on me, dude. My friends, the guys in Legion. Oh, what are you, a vlogger now? Like on my stories, they're like, oh, who are you talking to, man? I was like, man, maybe fucking one of my friends. Like maybe I was doing it just for.
Hey, the reason why they were commenting is because they were watching.
Yeah,
they were taking the time to watch it, and then let me bust his balls.
Yeah, and so I didn't mind it. I was like, yeah, I'm talking to one of my friends maybe who wants some information, right? And that was it. So understand, man, just be in it for the long run. Like, this is a long game, not a sprint. And this is a marathon. So just chop the wood, enjoy the process, fall in love with kind of doing it and sharing a message and being positive.
The old Taylor, what do you miss the most?
The old? Lack of responsibility. Do you know what to do what the fuck I wanted and know, like, and just not understanding what it was doing to me, you know, because being ignorant. Right? Ignorance, I would say, is what I miss. And so that's gone now. And so once I'm not ignorant anymore, I'm held to a higher responsibility.
We're all still ignorant. We just learned how to work with it better.
I'm ignorant about shit I don't know about yet, but I try to be a little bit less ignorant on the big stuff.
How's your relationship with your dad today?
Great. Right? That's the other piece, man, is things start to heal with my dad. You know, he's had his struggles, but he's like, dude, I'm really impressed by what you've done, man. Like, because everybody thought I was going to fall off the rails at some point. Him too. He's like, maybe in his heart, he's like, man, he kind of just followed my path. And so he's gotten his macros good, man. He's always been bodybuilding and stuff, but he's like, man, he's into the game now. And then his wife's into it, right? And now he's watching him. Now his relationship with his sister's better because he's better. Be that lighthouse, man. That's all it is. Be a lighthouse. And it's not that we're some beacon of light and some perfect thing, but be as best as you can. Right? Be as good of a motherfucker as you can. Try to be that generational character that changes the script. If you have a history, a chain of some, family curse, break it, right? Break it. So your kids, so I don't push that same pain onto my kids or whatever.
When's the book out?
Should be next year. I'm going to have some stuff that's probably going to have to get redacted. It's got to go through the Pentagon approval process. And there's props. So it'll be next year sometime.
How was the process writing that and actually putting your story down on paper?
Man, I started it when I was in Estonia. So it was I just was writing a little bit every day. But then now it's getting into more the characters of the Foreign Legion. That's what I'm focusing in on. Who were the guys that are in there, right? Who are those guys? That's what I think a lot of people are interested in, and that I've had to go back because I got the broad strokes now. Now it's like going back into the characters of who I met there.
I've asked this of other SEALs. You talk about, especially those who are really into fitness. Mm-hmm. Are you a cold plunge guy, or are you like, screw that, I spent too much time being cold?
I ain't going in the cold plunge, bro. I'll go in the cold plunge like Laird Hamilton or those guys are training. I'll go up there, but it's got to be near a sauna or a steam room. I'm not going in the cold plunge, dude. No, I'm good. I'm sure it's beneficial, but and I'm not talking shit people that do it. I'm too soft for it, bro, I think.
Anything we missed that you want to make sure you get out there?
Man, we're meant to feel good. We're meant to feel positive, right? We're not meant to feel perfect, euphoric all the time. We do have biological wiring as cavemen to, get moving, and anxieties. That's what gets us moving. Understand yourself. Understand where you're at. Be honest. Strip away the lies, strip away the noise. And if you do need a little help, man, it's power to reach out, man. It's working efficiently. Let's get some outside information. If you need help, man, I'm here. It doesn't have to be me. Reach out to somebody that you respect, that you like, the life they're living, the mindset they have. Get some outside information and accountability, man, so we can get some momentum quick. Because I'm not about, you could maybe figure it out in 3 years, or you can figure it out in 3 months. Fuck, man. I know which one I choose. That's the route I went, and it really fucking helped me.
Well, and the other thing, too, with that is if you try to figure it out on your own, you may make such big mistakes that you cause even more damage.
Yeah, and it's expensive. People forget that they think about the little upfront cost, but they don't think about the years of cost of not only quality of life, but in poor habits and food and this and that and potentially lost opportunities. You're going to make money, right? So think about it a little differently, right? Open your mind up and think about actually what you're losing by not starting.
Appreciate your time. I wish you all the best. I look forward to reading the book.
Paul, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you watching. But before you go, if you like the video, please hit that subscribe button. Also, any comments are appreciated. Thank you.